Southern California and LA's premier horticulturist. Cassy Aoyagi of Form LA, and also she's a long-standing member of the board of the Theodore Payne Foundation, which of course is a non-profit representing the native plant movement in LA. We have David Brown, who I still think of as the new man on the white horse, 10 years new, revolutionizing Descanso Gardens in La Cañada. So the place that was once known for its choo-choo trains and quaint things is coming on as a modern California garden that hopefully will represent the values we need for landscaping to remain sustainable and beautiful in Los Angeles. And to the audience, thank you very much for coming. I'm going to start off by asking each of you, Cassy, you first, if you had one wish for what you could change about LA landscaping right away, one element, what would it be?
My wish for LA is that it would be a Disneyland of nature. And that nature would be comprised of predominantly California natives and edibles that were attracting beneficial insects and hummingbirds, and that you would just walk down, you know, a Hancock Park sidewalk and be admiring all the color and the fragrance and the variety, and it would just be a tapestry of just gorgeousness. That is my wish.
Okay, tapestry of gorgeousness. Over to you.
Emily, I think the one thing that I would change is that people actually went outdoors and used their landscapes, lived in their landscapes, experienced the landscape. Because I think if they had more personal experience with the landscape, they would make more informed decisions about plant choice, about the interface between the urban and the natural, and would enjoy life more.
Now this question is structural. We have a city that's been landscaped, whether we see it or not, around lawn, a hedge, and a specimen tree. In order to bring into our landscapes a different planting scheme, we also have to change the way we design gardens. What are some of the structural changes you would like to see made as you walk up people's front walks? Would you know, where the lawn is, where the tree is, where the hedge is?
I think that you step backwards a little bit further before you go right into the answer to that question. I think that you back up a little bit and you make it a bit more personal, and you think about who you are, what your lifestyle is, and how you might use that space, and what is the architecture of your home, and what is the aesthetic that you want to have. So I think making it very personal before you start running to decisions about where you place things. And then all of a sudden, once you answer some of those key personal questions and have a little bit more understanding about your site, these things fall into place really, really naturally, and they don't feel as forced as the hedge that circulates your perimeter and the lawn that's right inside of it and the tree that seems randomly placed. So without giving you where those things should go, I think it's a bit more personal, and it's going to vary from site to site.
Okay, before we move on, I want to ask you about, I'm new to gardening. I want to find out what I like. How do I do that?
Well, for one, you can go to Descanso Gardens and come and see the new demonstration garden, which represents the new look for LA. And I think getting out and getting exposed to demonstration gardens, or going to the Theodore Payne Foundation, where there's, you know, 500 to 600 100 species of California native plants and figuring out what appeals to you when you look at a plant, and not making it too broad, not getting caught up in, I mean, for me, someone says, what's your favorite plant? Oh, every plant is my favorite plant, but your job when you're trying to figure this out is figure out exactly what really makes you happy when you look at a plant, and then narrow that palette down to a very small palette that you can work with so that it's not overcomplicated.
I think you have a lot of sources of inspiration, but I think Cassy is right. When you're thinking about your own garden, it really helps to go look at other people's gardens and sort out the things that appeal to you specifically. Some people like a landscape that reveals itself slowly, a winding path. Other people like a more formalized, geometrical arrangement. The one thing not to do is to accept the developer's default. The developer's default is edge, lawn, specimen.
We have a modern successor to the developer's default, which is the water company's rebate default, which is really just as bad. So in lieu of lawn, you have gravel, you have a dying tree because it's no longer getting water, and you have probably a dying hedge for the same reason. It seems to me that there's a lot more than plants needed to reconfigure. Can you explain some of the challenges that you have in a new garden, breaking up the space differently to use water more efficiently, mitigate urban heat island effect, and bring pleasure and beauty?
Shall I go? Yeah, and I think Emily's exactly right. If we start thinking about where we live as a site rather than as the location for a garden, I think that broadens the way we think about it. When you look at a site, you look at things like drainage, you look at things like contour, you look at things like potential for sun and shade. The design problem of the site is will lead, I think, necessarily to a conversation about resources as well as human usability. And I think that where we are now, interestingly, is a tipping point where the resources have become as important or more important than preconceptions of what's usable and what's feasible.
You answered that very well. It's hard to add to that. Going back to the rebates, I think that the rebates are creating a bit of excitement that is leading to some answers that are not speaking to some of the things that David just spoke to. And so I think more emphasizing that get out and get educated, find the resources so that you can analyze what might work for you in your space and not quickly take advantage of the rebate and do it right the first time, really. I mean, David said all the things that really are important to the site, but I think that getting it right the first time is more important than anything, and creating a balance using materials instead of having an entire gravelscape. Looking at the varieties that could be available for you to accent as part of your architecture or to provide the shade on the right side of the house instead of the wrong side of the house. You can still have the hierarchy that you have when you design. You know, there is a hierarchy that people love when the lawn goes up to the hedge and then the tree. You can have that, but you can place it so much more strategically when you understand the site and you have spent some time educating yourself on what resources are available to create that balance and give you the full package of things that a landscape offers rather than just one thing, which is drought-tolerant plants. That's not really where it ends, that's just where it starts.
We've had a situation recently with the rebates coming through. Most of you will have heard that the Metropolitan Water District recently approved another $350 million of rebate funds on the back of the 100 million that has already been allocated. And I think anyone in LA will have seen these gravel gardens going in where, and the reason I come to this is because there's this idea that the rebate will cover the cost of a new landscape. And while it will buy you a certain gravel dump, it may ultimately knock your property value. It may actually end up costing you. And I wanted to ask these two experts about the true cost of a new replacement landscape and also the time span one should be thinking of. Is it something that can happen in 48 hours with turf terminators for the exact cost of your rebate? Or is it something that should be taken gradually?
First of all, like I'm out of. Is this one better? Yes. First of all, I think that for the NWD to put that kind of money into an incentive program for encouraging people to look at their landscapes from the standpoint of resource, particularly water, is admirable. But I also think that it's misguided in a way because it leads people to instantaneous solutions. And I'm going to campaign for a more gradualist approach. And I wish NWD could make some adjustments to their policy that allowed to accommodate this approach. The easiest thing in the world almost to do in a garden is to tear it all up. All it takes is a couple of strong machines and a couple of dumpsters, and you can start with an absolute clean slate. But the urge that we have as humans is to get to a completion. And so that, in turn, requires us to immediately fill that empty space up. And with the easiest possible materials, which, as Emily points out, may not be the best for the long term. And also the seasonality of it is important. The time to plant in Southern California is in October, November, and December. The time to plant is not in April, May, and June. Planting in April, May, and June virtually guarantees failure in this climate. So if the rebate program had been more goal-oriented rather than knee-jerk oriented, I think it could have been much more powerful. But nonetheless, it does point out the importance that water is going to play in everything that we do in Southern California.
Yeah, I think that I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and there's always a lot of pressure from a client to get the project done. And the more involved I get with what I do, the more I realize how unique every single site is in Los Angeles, from the Hollywood Hills to the coast in Santa Monica to the foothills in Pasadena and everything in between. And so if I'm supposed to come to you as an expert, I cannot become an expert about your site in a week. I have to study the site, understand the site, and I need to actually get information from you who's intimately familiar with the site. So you also need to share your knowledge with me. Then I need to understand your aesthetic and all of your goals. And then I need to incorporate my strategies to save you water and to use the right plants and to have permeable pavings and to use gray water and all of these things that we're doing. And then I have to make it beautiful. And then I have to make it low maintenance. And these things really, really take a lot of time. And so to have this rebate out there that has a prescribed list of plants or limitations where you can't use alternative low water lawns, and it doesn't require you necessarily to go into a subsurface irrigation situation. I think it's a bit short-sighted, and it's rushing people to an end result that I am concerned may not give LA the tapestry of beauty that I wish for.
Good answers, thank you both. I have a question for the audience. Has anyone here done a rebate garden? And could you describe it?